Guys, welcome to this first video of World Map Strategy Kits for Unity. In this video we will learn how to create a very basic user interface that will allow our users to select a country, show its provinces, and make a simple zoom-in navigation to the provinces. This video tries to reply to an user question on our support forum. You can find it here, and he basically wants to learn how to do two things. The first one is how to extract country and province information from the World Map Strategy Kit asset. And the second one is how to extend custom structures that he wants to create with extra information like attributes for the countries or the provinces that he will want to use to store in-game information, like population, industry, technology levels, or whatever information. Okay, so let's address in this video the first request, how to build this user interface. And you can also find this demo scene included in the package. It is the number 26 called UI population. And but we will learn how to create this demo scene from scratch. So let's go. Create a new scene, and now look for the World Map Strategy Kit prefab, which is located in the World Map Strategy Kit resources, WMSK and prefabs folder. Drag and drop to your project hierarchy, and here it is. You will see the map covering the entire game view, because by default the fit window width and fit window height properties are set on. Now, one thing I like to do when I drag and drop a prefab from an asset is to break the prefab instance, because this way I can freely change any properties, save the scene, and it won't be affecting the default prefab, right? So go back to the scene, add a new canvas UI, and I will continue coding the different user interface elements. So let's speed up this a little bit. This is our very basic prototype for the user interface. It has two drop-downs controls, two labels, and a button. The idea now is to code some game logic that detects the user clicking, selecting one of the countries on this list, then refreshing the province drop-down, and once the user selects one of the provinces, make the zoom in, make some cool navigation over the map, and also do some selection, some visual blinks over the countries and the provinces. Let's see how all of this works. Right, I'll be creating now our game logic. Create a new game object called game logic. You can put whatever name you want, and add a new C# script called game logic as well. The purpose of this script is to wire the user interface with the World Map Strategy Kit API, so we can populate the drop-downs and react to the button clicks. So let's clear up this a little bit. There are lots of ways to interact with a user interface, but for sake of simplicity, I will put a public property of type drop-down. But before, I need to add the Unity Engine UI namespace to be able to reference to the user interface function with this public drop-down, countries drop-down. You can put in whatever name you want to this variable. We will be wiring up the game object to this variable later in the editor, and create another one for the provinces drop-down, right? Now, if we go back to the editor, we should see that this script will expose these two public variables, country drop down and provinces drop down. So let's drag and drop these elements from our canvas hierarchy. That's it. So I want now to populate the countries drop down with the country names. Let's create a specific function the countries drop down class has a method called adoptions that accepts either a list of drop-down option data elements or a list of strings that this is what we want to do. So let's assume I have already a list of strings which I call country names. Okay, this is the moment where we need to call warm up strategy kit and extract the list of the country names. We will do this by adding a reference to the warm up strategy kit API first, and also define a private variable here. This is the namespace because all of the classes and the functions property of warm-up strategy kit are defined inside the warm-up strategy kit namespace, so they don't collide with any other class or asset you may have in your project. And the main class that exposes the API is called WMSK. So we initialize this variable with the instance in our scene. WMSK.instance will reference the first map available in your scene, right? All right, let's add the list of country names. For that, I am using a function on world map strategy kit called getCountryNames, which accepts several parameters. In this case, it's allowed to return the list grouped by continent. I'm not wanting that. And also, I can add the index of the country at the end of each country name in the list. I neither want this. So just the list of the names which will be added to the country names, right? And once I have this list, I pass it to the add option, so the drop-down component, so they appear in my user interface. And don't forget to call populate country names in your awake or start. So let's see if this works. Right, here it is, but we see we have not cleared the drop down before adding the country names. Let's do that. Right. Okay, that's much better. One thing you can observe is that in the Unity standard dropdown, the first element is always selected by default. This is something that can be changed at this moment. So we can fake that using an empty string as the first element of our country name list, right? Okay. Now, we want to react to the user selection of the country name. So let's create a public event function that I will be calling it country selected. I know that all drop-down event functions will can receive the index of the element selected in the list, in the drop-down list, right? So I will create this function that will be called by the drop-down component once the user makes a selection. To write up this function to the drop-down control, select the drop-down control in the hierarchy and check this event on value changed. So just drag and drop your game logic placeholder and select the function country selected from the dynamic int group. Note that this function also lists it here in the static parameter list. What's the difference here? Well, if I select the static parameters entry, that means that I can pass a fixed number. So every time the user makes a selection, it will pass a number 4 to this function, which is not what I want. So go back and select the dynamic int. Now you see I can select a fixed number. The number will be the index of the entry in this list, right? So back to the code. Now I have the index of the entry list. So I need to get the country name which is selected, and I can do this using country dropdown, options, index, text, right? Now, once I have the country name, I can make the warm-up strategy kit do some fancy animation or selection. I have a method called blink country, which can accept a country name, accept a color, red, yellow, a duration for the effect, 2 seconds, and a blinking speed, 0.3 seconds. So you see no element selected by default. Here's the list with all the countries in the world. Let's select Argentina. Notice our brief animation, blinking animation, right? You can select another Puerto Rico, it's this little island here, or Antarctica, right? Okay, now next step will be populating the province drop-down based on this selection, the country selection. All right, so let's add a new populate provinces name. Okay, so in this case, I will do the same, a similar thing like the countries, list stream province names, and province names add an empty first element, and call, I will be adding a range of province names. In this case, I will be calling the function from the warm-up strategy kit called get province names, which accepts similar options like in the country version. In this case, I can group by country because it will be returning all the provinces in the world. This is not what I want, but the second overload allows me to get the list of provinces by a country. So I am passing the country index, the country number or the country code indicated by the warm-up strategy kit, not the index or of the country element in this list, because you can have 4 or 5 countries here only, and each country has a unique ID in warm-up strategy kit, right? So I will be passing our country index, and I won't be I don't want the province index next to the province name. So I need to get the country index for the selection. So just get it from the warm-up strategy kit. So, oops. Everything in warm-up strategy kits has an index, right? Either it is a province or a country or a city. Everyone has an ID, a number that you can use to pass among functions. In this case, we can pass the country name, right? So we need to get the country name back again, remember that you have here, use it to blink the country selector, right? So instead of doing this boilerplate code, we can just pass the country name to the populated province's name function. Now, let's review this a little bit. This function will accept the country name, convert it to the country index returned by the world map strategy key framework, prepare a list of provinces names, add an empty string as the first element, and finally we need to populate the provinces drop down with the list of province names, right? That's all. So we select, for example, Argentina, and here we have its provinces. Again, we have not cleared the contents of the province drop down, gosh. So let's do that, right? Now it should work as expected, right? Argentina, Cordoba, Catamarca, Buenos Aires, right? It's working. Now let's do some animation as well when the user selects the province. For that, I will do the same. I am creating an event function that will be called by this drop down, right? I will call it province selected, and the logic will be very, very similar. So I am copying this one, and province selected. This will accept the index of the string element selected in this dropdown. Gets the in this case blink. The blink province accept a province index, right? Not a province name. So let's assume I have make up this province index first, and I will switch between blue and white for the same duration and speed. All right, and so we need the province index, right? So the world map strategy key provides you a function which is called get province index, which accepts the name of the country and the province name, which are two elements that we know. In this case, country name, province name. Country name, we can get the country name, right, from the country drop-down value. Country drop-down value is the index of the element selected in the list. So I pass this to the list of a string of the dropdown, and this will return me the currently selected text as the country name. And the province name, I have the province name in a similar fashion. Province dropdown, options. In this case, I can pass the index, which is obtained here, right? So I have the country name, the province name. I convert this to province index using the get province index, and use it to call the function blink province, right? So one more thing we need to do is to wire the province drop-down selection to the function I have written. So let's add our game logic here and select province selected, right? So, okay, let's go back to the Argentina example. Argentina blinks the country and select Cordoba, and we can see Cordoba blinks correctly. So we can do lots of things with regards to the visualization. For example, selecting the World Map Strategy Kit game object, we can go to the province settings, make province highlight enable, so I can see how they highlight, and also mark the show provinces toggle, so we can see how the provinces are distributed inside the country. So let's select another province, Jujuy, there, or Tucumán, over there. You can see that the borders of the country are not matching exactly the border of the provinces. This is because the default resolution for the frontiers detail in the country setting is set to low. If we change this to high, they will match the province level of detail. You can see now how they match correctly. Now, finally, we need to implement some logic for the zoom in button. So the province selected here can be maximized in the view. So back to the code, simply write a function that will be called by the button click event. Let's call it province no, zoom in click. If I select the button, I can see a on click event here. Let's add the game logic function I have created. Game logic zoom in click, right? This does not accept any integer, index, or nothing, just the click event. So now I want to make a zoom in. So World Map Strategy Key provides a flight to functionality that I can use probably flight to city, country, location, or province. In this case, I want to fly to the province, and I need a province index. And I can specify the duration for the navigation, for the transition. In this case, for example, I'm making the zoom last for 2 seconds, and the zoom level is a value from 0 to 1. From the min zoom range, I can specify in World Map Strategy Kit the minimum distance to the map to the maximum distance. In this case, let's put a relative value of 0.1, which is at 10% from the maximum world space unit distance that I can configure here. If I drill down to the interaction settings, I have the distance mean for the zoom and the distance max. These are 10 meters, right? So when I specify 0.1 is 10% of the max distance, right? So we need to compute the province index. In this case, I can just copy this code, but the index is not defined in this case, so I can just get it from the province drop-down control, right? Let's review this. This component, the button, has a potential event called on click. This on click is wired up to the game logic script and the function, which is getting the currently selected country name from the drop-down, the country drop-down. Same for the province, converting them to the province index and passing this index to the flight to province method. So let's see how it looks like. Here we go. So it works. Of course, it can be improved by making this selection permanent. Let's do that. We can use another interesting method, very used method in World Map Static Kit, which is called toggle province surface. This will color the surface of a province with a texture or a fixed color. In this case, I'm passing province index, color green, for example. I'm saying that this surface is going to be visible because this same function can be used to hide the coloring, and use a color that will be some greenish color, semi-transparent. So this is 0 for red, 1 for green, 0 for blue, and half 1 from alpha component, right? So that's it. Let's give it a try. The function toggle province surface really accepts many options like textures and opaque colors or transparent colors. So it will choose proper material based on what you pass to this function. So there's a lot of options here to experiment with different country textures or terrain textures. For both countries, provinces, and also cells in case you enable the hexagonal grid. But we will address this in a later video. Just to check if this is working as we want it to. Select any province here. Let's do the zooming, and you can see here the province is now highlighted, right? Based on the colors we have specified in the call to the function. So it's working right. Of course, you can customize the look and feel of the map using the World Map Strategy Kit component here. Drill down to the provinces settings, and you can make all the provinces borders to be visible. Enable province highlight. So whenever the user moves around the map, the provinces react to the selections. As you can see, the borders of the countries are not matching exactly the borders of the provinces. This is because by default, World Map Strategy Kit will load the low level of detail for frontiers, for country frontiers, but just switch this option to high level, and then you see the borders of the provinces are exactly matching the borders of the countries, because they are two different layers here. So depending on your game, you may opt to include data for provinces and countries, or just for countries, right? Or even show just the borders of provinces and not the countries themselves. So there is a lot of options to try here, but for this first tutorial, I think we are done. Remember that this demo scene can be found inside the demos folder of World Map Strategy Kit. It's the number 26 called UI Population. So that's all. I hope you enjoyed this short video, and see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.